one more talk now before lunch, I'll hand you over to Steve Thompson.
Hello, I'll try and be quick if I know I'm between you and food. So my name's Steve Stops. I've got a varied background. I didn't actually originally come from the games industry. I've worked in all sorts of industries, and almost contrary to what AJ said earlier, my background for the last 15 years has been as a project manager and producer across loads of different industries, and kind of brought those skills straight across to the games industry. They do transfer, oddly enough, human beings, whether they're creative human beings or people working in other office environments. But I guess I'm the business guy that AJ referred to earlier. That's kind of what I do. When I set up my indie studio that I'm running at the moment, Lumo Developments, people said to my team, there's kind of like 3 amazing game developers and me, and they're like, why have you got Steve? It's well, because he's our producer. And why do you need a producer? And I think hopefully after this, I can show you why they need a producer and why we're useful. My background in games is I founded a team called Team Lumo a couple of years ago, did a mobile game called Kumo. It was editor's choice in about 72 countries and was Mac World Game of the Year in 2013. Had about 1 million downloads in about 10 days, so I did quite well. And that was our kind of first foray into making mobile games. And the studio that was made with was part of Blitz Game Studios. When that closed, I actually rescued my team out of the closure and pulled them in and set up Lumo Development. So we're now working on Lumo Deliveries, which is our exciting new project. But enough about me and that. Let's start talking about this. So I guess the big question is, why bother with production? So, and in this term I mean project management. Why as an indie developer do you need to even think about any kind of project management or anything at all when you're busy making your amazing creative project? And hopefully today I can show you some of those things. What I've tried to do is in the next 20 minutes, I've tried to pack in every bit of knowledge I've had in the last 15 years of project management into the next 20 minutes. I'm sure I've missed some stuff, but I'm trying to give you everything that I think is really useful, and probably, hopefully, every single slide to take it. And there's the Wi-Fi stuff. Is there a way of stopping that doing that? Or will it just keep coming up? That's going to be
spell now, the magic
spell. Just so otherwise you'll get my Wi-Fi popping up every 10 minutes or whatever presentation. Okay. So what I hope to say by worrying about and thinking about project management is a lot of disappointment. There's nothing more disappointing than getting a game and releasing a game that's lower quality than you hoped for at the beginning. And that's something that often comes from a lack of planning and project management. There's lots of stress come with it. I couldn't agree more with what Rick said earlier. I actually believe consistent crunch is damaging for any game that anyone ever works on. Human beings work well doing 40 hours a week. If you start pushing much beyond that on a consistent basis, actually the tiredness gives you the same kind of impact as being drunk. And I'm sure we don't do our best programming when we're drunk, or our best artwork when we're drunk, or you might do, but you don't want to be doing that consistently. It will cause you stress, it will damage your health, and it will stop you being able to make the best games you can make long term. Actually, all the studies in every industry for the last 100 years show that if you consistently work more than 40 hours a week, you'll actually start to produce less than 40 hours a week worth of work consistently over time. So you actually get more done if you limit the amount of time you're doing it. That isn't to say don't ever do overtime. Occasionally you'll go, I'm really into this thing that I'm doing, I know the solution to that problem and I want to carry on working doing it. If you're inspired to do it, but don't do it every night. That's what I'm saying. And it'll stop boredom. I see loads of indie developers. You start a project, you're super excited about your game, you start running around going, yeah, I'm making this amazing game, and then 2 years later you're still working on the same game you thought it would take you 5 months, and you're fed up with it, and you just want to get it done and out the door. And it's a sad point where you start to become bored and tired of your own game. So hopefully if you plan properly, you can stop that happening. You can make your game, get it out while you're still excited and enthusiastic about it. So I want to start with kind of a little example. So here's our 2 indie developers, it's Dave and Doris. And Dave and Doris decide that if they've worked really hard, they've saved up £5,000, and they've worked out between them that if they cut down their accommodation costs and living bunk beds and live off pot noodles for the next 5 months, they could live off £1,000 a month and they could get their game done in 5 months. And actually this isn't a kind of mythical story. I see this a lot. part of a group called the Arts Creatives in Leamington, where we've got a shared workspace for lots of different indie developers. And I see lots of people who do this and go, yeah, I've worked it out, I can make my game, and I can get it done in 5 months, I've got just about enough money to do it. And then 5 months later I see them and say, how's your game? And oh, we're not finished yet. You know, well, how are you living? Oh, we don't really know. We're probably going to have to do a bit of work for hire or something for the next few months to pay our bills. Now we're going to have to do this. And he speaks to me a year later, and they've done like a year's worth of work for hire, and they've been living month to month on their work for hire, and they still haven't finished their game. It becomes a complete mess. And what I'm trying to do is hopefully give you some pointers that help resolve some of these things. So the first one, and this is, if you want, the slide after this, I would say is almost the most important slide of the presentation. If you want to forget everything else I do on the rest of the slides, you can, but this will alone save you time, effort and pain. In my head, when I'm on a project, I have a triangle. Every single decision, every single minute of every single day, I have a triangle in my head. And the triangle looks like this. On one side you've got time, on the other side you've got cost, on the bottom you've got scope, and in the middle you've got quality. And what I do at the beginning of the project is I work out all the features we're going to have in the game. Yes, 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 it will change, but you need a feeling. You need a feeling of what your game's going to be, what it's going to be. And that's your scope. You then decide how long you can afford to make the game for, so you set your time. And that's probably related to your cost, which is how much money can you invest in the game. And then you set your quality benchmark. How good's our game going to be? And hopefully you're setting your expectations really high. You want to make an amazing game. And this is important because over the life cycle of your game, stuff will change. Yep, you'll make your first prototype, and all of a sudden you'll realise the feature you thought was amazing is rubbish, and the feature you hadn't even thought about that makes the game incredible. So you need to suddenly change everything. But if you've got this triangle, if you change your scope of your project, if you change by adding a new feature, or you change one of the features, something else is going to give. So that means you're either going to need more time, you're going to need a bit more money because you'll need more people on the project or whatever, and, or worse of all, your quality is going to suffer. And it's normally the quality that suffers because people don't change the other things. People add and add and add and add more features in, and either they don't finish on time or they get fed up at the project and they release something that isn't as exciting, as amazing as they hoped it would be. Does that make sense? So in your head, whenever you make a decision at the beginning, list out all the stuff you think you're going to have in your game, really set that up, be prepared to change it, but every time you do change it, understand that something else is going to have to change. And that something else could have a massive ramification. So if you've introduced, if you set out saying we're going to have 5 levels, and you make the 5 levels and go, there's not enough gameplay, we're going to need 20 levels, that's going to take you a lot longer to make. So you need to then think about how you're going to do that. And if you're planning from that early on, it saves you a lot of planning. Yeah? Simple as that. So we've heard a lot of talk about Agile today. Agile is a buzzword, Agile is a project management methodology, and I will go through a little bit of Agile and Scrum. I guess it's only right, I'm a Scrum Master. I have done my Scrum Master training. I've also done lots of other project management methodologies. We'll go through some of the pros and cons in a minute. But the most important stuff is to understand the Agile Manifesto. So when Agile was founded, I think it was something like February 2002, something like that, when there was a group, about 10, 15 programmers got together and they said, we're going to set a new way of working. We're going to come up with this amazing way of having self-organising collaborative teams. And they set up, and each of them signed a manifesto of what they thought was important about Agile development. And that manifesto only consisted of these 4 lines, that's it, and it's worded in a very specific way. We value the stuff on the left more than the stuff on the right. The stuff on the right is important, but it's not as important as the stuff on the left. So really simple. So we value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So for me, it's more important if I'm working with a team, that the team have freedom to work the way they do, rather than follow a set series of processes or using tools in a very specific way. It's why, me personally, I don't use any Scrum software or project management software, because it will make you work in a very specific way. It doesn't give me the flexibility to allow my team to work in the way they want to work, so I don't use it. I use a whiteboard or a wall, something the team could say, I want to work this way, and you go, right, okay, I'll just draw an extra column on the whiteboard. It takes me 2 seconds, I don't have to email a software development company and wait for them on. They say, no, you can't do that. We've all learned over the years. Yeah, I use Word for years, and I know all its weird foibles, and I work the way that Word likes to work, rather than the way I particularly want to work, and that's me valuing tools over the individual interactions. Yeah, that makes sense. I want to think about how people are working together. I value working software over comprehensive documentation. If you've worked in a large studio, you've all had the pain of making game design documents, technical design documents, art design documents. I would say the art, if you take the game design document as an example, no one reads it. The only person that reads it is the designer that wrote it. They produce like a 500-page tomb of documentation, and then they say, why didn't you know about that? It's on page 427 of the design document. And the program goes, I didn't read that. No one reads the documentation. Even your customers, if you're doing work for hire stuff, don't read your documentation. The amount of projects I've been on where we've delivered exactly what we said, and can't go, well, it's not what I want. And they're unhappy. And you say, well, it's what you said you wanted at the beginning. You signed it. And they go, well, I'll pay you. I'm not happy. Yeah? They want to see working software. They want to play a level, and they want to be able to see the gameplay. And the same for us. Yeah, rather than wasting all of our time writing everything down in minute detail, let your game be your game design documentation. If someone says, how's this character going to feel when I play him on level 3? You go, oh, play level 3. And then they think, oh yeah, I understand. Yeah, does that make sense? We value customer collaboration over contract negotiation, unless you're doing work for hire. It might not necessarily be relevant for you. But most importantly of all, we value responding to change over following a plan. Like Rich said in his presentation, planning is important. The rest of what I'll go through today is how to plan, but it doesn't mean the plan's important. Be prepared to throw away your plan and write a new one. The amount of times I've seen, in my old days of project management, when I used to be a bad project manager, I had these beautifully prepared Gantt charts that had every person's task all allocated to them, exactly when it would happen. And what that means is, I was actually upset when anyone wanted to change anything, because I had to redo all of my Gantt chart. And that's no way to work. You shouldn't be letting the quality of what we're making be led by me going, yeah, but I need to redo all of this. Oh no, I really can't bother to do that. No, I need to be flexible enough. So if someone says, yeah, we want to change it, I go, okay, that's fine, we'll change it, it's fine. And even if it's right towards the end of the project, you should be prepared to change it. Yeah? So, is everyone here familiar with what Scrum is? Because I don't want to bore you by going through Scrum. Is there anyone, let me ask it a different way, is there anyone here who doesn't know what the Scrum process looks like? Got a couple of hands up. I'll go through it really quickly. It is really simple. Scrum is a very light project management methodology. So the idea is, you have teams, and the teams set a sprint period, and the sprint period is normally 2 to 4 weeks. No shorter than 2, no longer than 4. I won't go into the reasons now, you can ask me questions about that at the end if you really want to know. And what you say is, me, the product owner, for example, would say, here's all the features that I want in the product you're going to make for me, or the game you're going to make for me. And the team then decide which features they're going to do in the next 2 weeks. They then do a planning meeting where they say what they're going to do. So they take stuff from the backlog, which is the list. They plan what they're going to do in the next 2 weeks. They do the next 2 week sprint. During that sprint, they have daily stand-up meetings where they'll talk to each other. And the talking consists of, what did I do yesterday? What am I going to do today? Is there anything stopping me doing my stuff? At the end of the 2 week period, everyone gets together and they review the deliverables, everything that was agreed to be done over the 2 weeks. And then the whole process just starts over again. So they go back and say, right, did we do all the stuff we said we were going to do? No, we didn't do these 5 things. They go straight back onto the backlog. The team then go, right, well, we'll take these things off the backlog, we'll do these over the next 2 weeks, and off we go. So it's like this rolling, everlasting cycle. However, I would say for most of you here, Scrum is irrelevant. How many people here are running a team size of more than 7 people? 1. And this is why. So Scrum's designed for teams of 7 or more people. It comes with quite a lot of extra baggage because you've got these review meetings and these planning meetings and the daily meetings and all of this extra stuff. And if there's 2 of you and you're doing all of that, where's your time to actually make your game? So you need something lighter and more flexible. And this is a key thing that people miss. Scrum is a flavour of Agile, but Agile isn't necessarily Scrum. Those manifesto, those rules and principles we saw earlier, they can apply in lots and lots of different ways. And I think both Rich and AJ said it earlier. All you need to do is find out what works for your team, what works best, but still have some elements of this to give you your best structure for success you can possibly have. Yeah, make sense? So, let me go through and show you what I think are some of the key pillars, some of the key things I think you need to think about when you're doing a project. I appreciate that most of you here don't have a lead. You don't have a producer in your team, and most of you probably want to be making your game, so most of you don't want to be spending loads of time on all the boring paperwork. I view my job in the team is to do all of the horrible, nasty stuff that all the other good creative guys don't want to do. I do all the stuff that's left over out of all their things. So you don't want to be doing all of that, but you want to be doing some of it to save you some pain. So my first principle is a simple principle of beats. All it is setting up a very light framework at the beginning, the middle and end of your project. So decide how long you want to spend making your game, and then work out where you should be at the different stages of making your game. So here's a live example. This is actually the one I did for my current project right at the very beginning. It should be light. You do not want to be setting loads and loads of detail in stone. Because, like I said earlier, the more detail you have, when it changes, the more stuff you have to update. You want to keep it light enough that it's not an overhead for yourselves at all. So here's my project. This has actually changed a lot already, and I'm only at month 3 already. So month 1, I said project initiation. That's where we're going to start. Month 3, I should have all my prototyping complete. Month 6, I'm going to be feature complete. And month 7, I'm going to be ready to submit. Yep, that's my plan, and then by month 8 it's going to be out. So I have an 8-month cycle, and they're my key beats. So I know roughly where I'm supposed to be at any time in the project. And what that lets me know is whether we're behind or ahead of schedule. So I've constantly got this thing. This is up on the wall, my team know this stuff as well, so they know themselves whether we're behind or ahead and where we should be aiming for at any particular time. So it helps break up our game up into meaningful deliverables. Actually, we're at month 3, and we're actually finished our prototyping at the end of about halfway through month 2. So we did our first set of prototypes, completely threw them away because they were all rubbish, but took all the lessons we learned from it, applied them to a new prototype. We did 3 prototypes in 2 weeks, and at the end of that we went, yeah, we've learned all the stuff we need to know from the prototype, let's start production. So that changed really quickly. It actually changed about halfway through the first month where we had the first 2 prototypes and knew what was going on. So we changed this straight away, but we had it at the beginning, so we now know that we're ahead of where we were intending to be. We've redone this now for the project. And also build a list of all of the features you think you're going to have in your game. It doesn't need to be complete, it won't be complete, it will change, that's fine. But having a list of all of the stuff you think you're going to want to make. Because remember back to the triangle area, if you've got a list of all the things you think you're going to have in your game, if you add something to that list, it means you're adding to the scope, which means you know something else is going to have to change somewhere else. Yeah, makes sense? So these are actually from my project. These are deliverables that I've sent out. So I've got a list. This is just an excerpt from my backlog. And all I've got is a list of headings of different features and elements of the game. They're not particularly specific, but everyone on the team knows what all of those mean. So we're all talking the same language. So when we're talking about the job builder screen, everyone in the team knows what that means. It doesn't matter. Some people like more detail. There's this whole thing about user stories and beautiful ways of writing all those. That's what you want to do in your team. You can do that if you want. We've just got a simple list. And then we've got priority that was agreed between all of us in the team of what's more important than what, running down the side. And here I've just marked off what was done and what was in progress. And here you can see, I come from a large studio, so I'm used to making kind of formal milestones. But formal milestone schedules for a publisher that I might have worked for in the past will be incredibly detailed. I don't know if you can read this now, but all I've basically got in here is things like milestone 2, you should have a revised game loop based on learnings from milestone 1, and we should have example 3D visuals rendering on target devices. And that's what I've got. So it's light enough that I don't have to worry about changing it. It's got not loads of detail in. I've got, oh, no, we've done this in milestone 3, it was supposed to be in milestone 5, I need to move all this about. They're just key overriding beats of where we should be in different elements of the project that all of us in the team all know and we've all agreed to. Yeah, really simple. The less detail you put in, the less of a headache it is. It just needs to be just enough so you're all clear about what you're trying to achieve by specific points in the project. Yeah, that's simple. I like buzzwords. I'm using buzzword. Kanban, it's an old buzzword. It goes back to kind of probably 60s and 70s Japanese methodology. What it really means is having post-it notes on the wall. Apparently there's even better. I think this, I can't remember what this is called. I always forget it. In Kanban, there's a beautiful term for this. It's something like my my visionary matrix or something rubbish like that. It's just post-its on the wall in 3 columns. That's all you need to worry about. So, ready just means stuff that we are ready to think about doing. Yeah, so effectively it's my backlog, whatever terminology you want to use, but it's basically all of the tasks you're going to do on a list. Ready. So I've got on one side I've got loads of post-its that are all the stuff we're getting ready to do. They're kind of things that are going to make up the game. Doing is anything that someone from the team's taken from that and stuff them all saying, I'm doing that now. I've only got 3 guys doing work in my team, so I never should have more than 3 post-its in there, because it can only really be doing one thing at a time. I let my team decide. So we've got a priority of what we thought was important as a team, but they don't necessarily take them in that order. So they know roughly they should be taking stuff that's high priority. But AJ said it earlier, my artist Nick might suddenly be inspired to do Doris's office in our game, and Doris's office was a priority 3 in our actual priority, but he felt inspired to do it. It'd take him a day, so he took it off and he had fun doing it for a day, and then he went back and took another one of the priority 1 tasks off. It's fine by that. That's not a problem. Wherever your creativity takes you, but as long as you're being mindful of the impact on the project, and then once it's done, you take it there and put it in the done column. Simple as that. So, took this a couple of days ago. This photo of our wall with our little wall of post-its. So I've got backlog, I call it a sprint, we're not doing it in sprints, we haven't set a 2-week window, the guys just take stuff off and put it on and we just roughly measure it against our sprints, our milestones. We don't have daily stand-ups because it's 4 of us, we're in the same office, we talk to each other all of the time. If you're in disparate offices, you might want to have something more formal where you speak every day, but that's up to you. Yeah, it's up to you to decide how you're going to do this and what works for you. This works for us, we like it. Guys, we post around, sometimes they forget and I ask them and then we move it across, but it helps me keep track of where stuff is as well. And then, in many ways, this is my most important and possibly most contentious recommendation out of all of it. I've got in, this has saved me more time than anything else I ever do in project management, but it's also caused me more arguments with people, and I'll explain both sides of that. So contingency for me means adding at least 20% onto everything you think. So what I mean by that, if Doris and Dave are making their game and they've said they're going to make it in 5 months and they're planning to finish it and release it in 5 months, I believe they should do one of 2 things. They should either be giving themselves 3 months or 7 months, not 5. Because they should be allowing less time or more time, giving themselves more room to make the game. Because as you start making whatever you're going to do, at the beginning, we don't know everything. Most of the stuff as you go into making any kind of creative project is completely unknown. So that means you're going to come up against stuff that doesn't go as well as you hope, and some stuff's going to go better. And often that balances out. So the stuff that takes longer takes shorter, and stuff that you plan for shorter takes longer, and that's all fine. But occasionally you'll hit stuff that you just hadn't even thought about. Yeah, particularly if you're new to this, it's one of the exciting things. Most of you guys are young and fresh and excited about moving into the venture of games, and that's a brilliant thing. There's a great quote from, who's the famous film director who did the Rosebud film?
Orson Welles.
Orson Welles, there you go. Orson Welles made a great quote where he said, if I knew what I know now about making films, I wouldn't have started making films. And it's a common thing that actually you're better off not knowing. Get your sleeves up, roll your sleeves up, get stuck in, make mistakes, and you'll learn from making mistakes. But by adding contingency on what you'll do, it means that those mistakes won't destroy your lives. When suddenly something takes a lot longer than you thought, you'd be going, okay, but that's okay, because we budgeted for some stuff that we didn't expect. Yeah, we allowed ourselves a bit more time. The mistake people make is they allow that to themselves too often. What I try and do personally is I allow myself contingency and then I do everything I can not to use it. Yeah? Because if I've got £10,000 to do my game and I allow myself £2,000 contingency, so I've actually got a budget of £12,000, and I get to the end of my game and I've only spent £10,000, I've got £2,000 more to spend on marketing. I've got £2,000 more that I could go to a show or promote my game or go to a different event. So I try and fight for this, but it's there for the stuff that you just can't do anything about, and it will happen. Does anyone here ever watch grand designers? Yeah? At the end of their projects, they're always over budget. And I guarantee, if you go back and watch loads of them, they're always over budget by between 20 and 40%. Yeah, that's the common. I actually normally add 40% onto my projects. I can't do that in the indie space because I can't afford the extra money it costs. But I will allow myself 20%, and I know that's probably not enough, so I fight even harder to keep the 20% contingency. I try and do my best to keep everything on track and not to allow for these unexpected things. But they will happen because they're called unexpected. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah, do that. There is a downside to it. So I remember when I first started working at a company that I won't name, when I sat down and explained contingency to my new boss, and he was the most excited he'd ever been. He was like, this is the best thing I've ever heard. Why aren't we doing this already? We should be doing this on every project we ever do. And I said, you know that's going to add 20% onto the cost. This was kind of a work for hire business. I said, so it's going to add 20% onto your cost. He's like, our customers won't pay that. And he suddenly realised that that's what it means. And it is what it means. If you work for hire or something and you immediately add 20% or 40% onto your budget, you're adding 20 or 40% onto your cost, which might make you less cost effective than your competition. So it's why you need to be mindful of this, and it's why it has caused me arguments and trouble in the past. But it will be there. You will run over budget. How many people here have actually made and shipped a game? How many, keep your hands up if you shipped it exactly on time and exactly on budget? Yeah, it just doesn't happen. I've done it once. The last game I did working for a studio, it was a 6-month project with 20 people on it, and we shipped to the day that I planned it for, and exactly to the penny on budget with 0 overtime, not 1 day of overtime on the entire project. At that point I thought I'm going to stop being a project manager, it will never get any better than that. But that was using full-on formal Scrum. It does work. It's a great methodology. But like the guy says, you can't do it from a book. Learning Scrum is a bit like when people make soda breads and bread like that, where you get like a little starter, like a bread starter, and often the starter's handed from person to person. Oh, you can have a bit of my starter to make your own sourdough. Scrum's a bit like that. It has to almost be handed down. I spend most of my time now, as well as doing my production stuff on my own team, going around and helping other companies fix Scrum, where someone's read a book, put Scrum in, and then missed all the stuff that actually makes Scrum work. So it is hard to do, but it can work. But you don't need to do Scrum because there aren't that many of you yet. So I'm actually. Oh, look at that. So I'm now bang on time for questions. So does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? Yes.
As a manager of people, can you combine contingency with incentive to make the project more efficient? Because if I'm a worker, I look at that 20% figure and say, if you're willing to spend 20% more, if I work really hard, can I have that as a bonus, please?
No, you can't. I've got a simple different belief in this, that I believe that money, so there's been research done on motivating staff, and actually what it's shown, particularly in creative industries, motivating staff purely by using money is overall bad. So in about 1983, there was a study done where they went into a group of school children, and they took two groups, and one group they said, here you go children, draw some pictures, here's some crayons, spend the afternoon drawing pictures. Children loved it, drawing pictures. The other group, they all drew pictures exactly the same, but at the end, they were all given a reward. They went back to the same school a month later, and they found the children that had been given the reward didn't want to draw pictures anymore unless they were being rewarded. Well, the other kids happily created and drew loads of amazing stuff. So actually paying people bonuses for doing what they're actually supposed to do, which is work hard and be invested in what they're doing, actually is negative for your business. What you really want to do is pay your staff a very good wage so money is taken off the table. So they don't have to worry about, so people can pay their bills, they can have a good lifestyle, and they can do all of that and not have to worry about eking out a little bit of extra money. And then after that, you then motivate them by rewarding them for making amazing, great creative products. You give them creative freedom, you let them come up with their own ideas, you give them the space to be inspired and have a better working environment. That's why I prefer to motivate my staff. If I do suddenly have loads of money at the end, probably spend it on a big team party so we can all say, well, what a great job we've done or something like that. But I wouldn't be giving it to individuals as bonuses. Does that answer your question? That's my belief anyway. Yes?
How do you stop that scope list of features increasing? Do you just sort of lock it at some point and say we're not going to add anything to it?
No, I never lock it and I allow it to increase, but I realise that there's going to be either one of three impacts. I'm going to need more people, I'm going to need more time, or I'm going to have to compromise my quality.
Is it worth dropping the quality?
I never ever drop quality because I want my game to be the best quality game in the world. So I will never ever ever drop quality. There is the fourth option though, which is you drop other stuff. When I prioritise my feature list, I do it in what I do 1s, 2s and 3s, and then I sub-grade within the 1s, 2s and 3s. My 1s, 2s and 3s are primary, secondary, tertiary. So primary, I cannot ship the game without these features. These are the core fundamental pillars of what makes my game good. These 2s are the things that are going to make my game significantly better. So they're the things that are going to increase my players' retention, their experience in the game above anything else. My 3s are the nice ideas you have all the way through the game that add charm and character and personality that need to be in the game, but I can ship without them if need be. And so what I always do is then have that kind of conversation with the team, where the team go, this is the most important thing in the world. You go, great, is it more important than the stuff we set as priority 1 at the moment? They go, no, it's not more important than those. Well, how about the 2s? And sometimes we go, yeah, it's more important than that one on the 2. Well, that 2 now becomes a 3. And I'm prepared that we could ship the game without the 3s. That's how I manage it. So there'll be things that we like, features that we have, stuff that was important to us at the beginning that we may ship the game without, just to get it in on time.
So if the whole thing is a sort of zero-sum game, you know, if you shift the scope and the time has to change, cost and so on, how do you actually work out what your total of everything is at the start? Is it just given to you from outside because you've only got a certain amount of money and time? Or?
Well, so that's a great question. It kind of takes me on to another big belief of mine, which is, as indie developers, we often undervalue ourselves. As indie developers, I believe we have the right to earn a reasonable salary. We shouldn't be expected to work for nothing. We should not be expected to create amazing entertainment for people and give it away for free and not be remunerated for it. It's unsustainable. We should be aiming to get good, sustainable salaries. So, say a good salary for someone of our age in a good industry, you say £30,000 a year. Yep. So I will be budgeting for my guys, that each one of my guys is going to earn the equivalent of £30,000 a year. I'd like to pay more, they're all worth far more than that, but they can live and have a good lifestyle at £30,000 a year. So when I'm working out how much my project's going to cost, what I hope is, say someone goes, right, I'll give you £100,000 to make a game. So I know I've got £100,000. And if I pay my guys the equivalent of £30,000 and I've got 3 people on the team earning that kind of level of money, that's going to cost me about £90,000 for an 8-month project. So that sets my window of how long I've got, yeah, by my budget. If I allow my 20%, realistically, probably only gives me 7 months to make a game. Yeah, does that make sense? So that's how I set my scope. So your scope is effectively set by those 2 things, which is how much money have we got to make the game, how much money do I need to live to make that game. And what my aspiration is, so I'm not looking for myself and my team to become incredibly wealthy. It would be nice, but I'm not looking for that. My aspiration is to make enough money from this game to make the next game, and enough money from the next game to make the next game, and the next game, and hopefully put some money in the bank so we can all deal with it if we don't have the success we're hoping for.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, another question. I think for the AJ Scruton guy, he's living in his parents' garage, so in a sense he's got no money but infinite time. Does that kind of distort that whole calculation?
No, he doesn't have infinite time because his parents will only allow him to keep living in the shed for a certain period of time. That will only be able to happen for a period of time. What it does mean is, and it's kind of that thing to be careful about, is how long should it take you to make a reasonable game? And there are loads of examples. You'll find millions of them of people who laboured for 5 years in their bedroom, released a game that's been phenomenally successful. For every one of those, I'll show you thousands upon thousands of people who failed miserably. I would suggest in the current world, if you're making a mobile game, you should be making a mobile game in between 3 and 8 months. You should not be spending any longer than 8 months making a mobile game. You should probably aim for 3. Lumo was made, it took longer because we had a publisher, I'm sure we'll be talking about that later, but we actually made the game to a releasable standard with 4 people in 12 weeks, and that's editor's choice, really well critically received game. So you can make really high quality content in really short periods of time if you think about it. The key thing is plan to make the game for the scope of people and time you've got, and allow that to kind of be your dictator. If you go, we're going to make a game in 3 months, and then someone says, right, yeah, we'll make a massive online MMO, then you go, no, we're probably not going to do that. go, what can we make in 3 months? What we're confident we can make in 3 months? And let that set your scope. And try and make it, the shorter you make the project, the more likely you are to get a financially sustainable model, because you're not got loads of upfront costs, you're not risking so much, you're not putting so much money on the table as the gamble. Yes, Black.
How do you resist the temptation to eat into that 20% during the course of your normal production?
Through years of knowing it's a bad idea. I've been doing this 15 years, so I know it's a bad idea to eat into it, so I fight every minute, and I try and make sure I'm normally successful at finishing with most, if not all of that. So I did a great work for hire project a few years ago with, I think I could probably start talking about some of this stuff openly now since it's all, but has anyone here heard of a lovely individual called Gregory Fishback? No? So Gregory Fishback founded Acclaim. He's known as probably one of the most difficult people in the industry. He was actually subpoenaed by the American government because he was using Acclaim as his own personal piggy bank. He was drawing over £10 million a year out when the company was making over $100 million a year loss. He's a really interesting individual, and I did a project with him where his team phoned me up pretty much on a daily basis, adding features and risks and problems to our game. I finished that game, so we had a 20% profit margin and 20% contingency, and I finished with 40% profit because we kept a 20% contingency. And it's fighting all of those decisions. It's the realisation that everything you change has an impact, and making a decision about, and Richard covered it earlier, about making a decision about, does that really benefit the player, or is it just a cool idea you had overnight to share some cheese and squash? We have a saying in our team, it comes from Jonathan Evans, my lead designer, who he'll always say, when he comes up with a new idea or a new thing, he'll always say, this is the best idea I've had today. And we won't put it on the feature list until it's settled for about 2 or 3 days, because there'll be a new idea every day. And sometimes the idea that seemed brilliant at the beginning of the week seems rubbish and pointless at the end of the week. Everyone gets excited, like AJ said, because it's the cool new idea. So we let them fester before we even think about starting to make them. Yeah, allowing those time. Let's say mature rather than fester, but fester is really what happens. Any other questions? We've got time for one more?
Yeah, I've got one.
Yeah.
It goes back to the backlog list you had.
Mm-hmm.
What is a motivational vignette bongo?
Yeah, okay. So our game is a non-game. We set out to make something that I don't think it's actually got any traditional game in it at all. But in fact, there's probably nothing traditional about it. If you met a team, you probably understand why. But so we have this concept of motivational vignettes. So we have, our game is about delivery drivers, so we have little drivers, and our drivers start off the square, but if you keep doing bad stuff to them, like sending them on long journeys without remunerating them properly, there's kind of quite a big social message underpinning this about how to manage people. But if you're mean to your staff, they get more and more unhappy until they go beatnik. And then when they go beatnik, then they'll drive slower, and eventually they'll just keep getting out of their vans every 2 minutes and playing bongos. But because our drivers like bongos, because they're clearly at their heart, they all really want to be beatniks. If you play them bongos or read them beat poetry, you'll actually make them happier and they'll start to become more motivated and work better. So the interactive vignette for bongos is where you actually go in and play bongos to your delivery driver to make them happy.
Awesome.
Yeah, okay, I think that's everyone. I'm around for lunchtime anyway, so if you want to grab me and ask me questions, I'm free. My email address is there, like Rich said, I'm open to emails, so if you want to email me about any questions you might have, feel free.